Hello again. I spoke yesterday about the influence of the descendants of the Yamnaya people, the Proto-Indo-Europeans, and the way in which they reached China and gave the Chinese a number of very useful inventions. Whenever conversation turns to the achievement of European science and culture, some fall is bound to mention ancient China and the supposed fact that some things were invented there quite independently. The magnetic compass is usually mentioned along with writing, paper and printing. What few people appear to realise is that China was still in the Stone Age when the Indo-Europeans, that is to say the descendants of the Yamnaya tribes, arrived and settled in what is now China. These people, sometimes known as the Tocharians, spoke an Indo-European language, and they brought with them all kinds of things, such as wheels, domesticated horses, and the ability to smelt and cast copper and bronze. This is actually a particular interest of mine, and I've kept in touch with developments in this field of study for many years now. There's no point in relying upon what one comes across on the internet. It's necessary to read actual books to understand the sequence of events. Even then, the ideas are continuously modified by new findings, particularly in genetics. So far as the Indo-Europeans are concerned, I'm a great fan of Mallory, perhaps the most well-known and familiar name in the book. This is a fairly standard work, and I thoroughly recommend it. I'm also interested in what you might call mavericks, people like Colin Renfrew. Um, Renfrew thought that the Indo-European homeland was in Anatolia, but I'm afraid that modern genetics have, to some extent, discredited his work. But I've always found Renfrew worthwhile. There's a lot of modern books on the subject as well, particularly by Americans. This one, How Bronze Age Riders from the Eurasian Steppe Shaped the Modern World, published by Princeton University. It's got quite an individual take on the whole problem of the Indo-European homeland and so on. These kind of books are of enormous interest, but keeping up to date entirely is not cheap. I've mentioned before that I subscribe to various magazines such as New Scientist and Scientific American, and they too often throw light upon the matter. This is last month's Scientific American, and it outlines an entirely new theory about the domestication of the horse as it touches upon the Yamnaya and Indo-Europeans. Once again, genetics promised to shatter a few old theories, and it's quite curious because I was enormously impressed with this book when I read it, The Horse, the Wheel and Language. But according to the latest thing in Scientific American, the theories advanced here are pretty well blown out of the water. The difficulty is that without actually studying such books and keeping abreast of modern research, it's tricky for the average person to understand this subject. Many people will muddle it up with the Silk Road and vague memories of Marco Polo and so on. The actual influence of the Indo-Europeans on China started thousands of years earlier, when a people called the Tocharians settled in China after migrating east from what is now Ukraine and western Russia. They established communities around Tarim a couple of thousand years before Christ. They brought with them wheeled carts and also metalworking, which had not previously been seen in China. It was due to their influence that China emerged from the Stone Age and began using metals. It was also they who introduced the use of wheels and domesticated horses. These things spread out from the Indo-European settlements in northern Tarim into other parts of China. There's no reason at all to suppose that the Chinese would ever have emerged from the Stone Age had they not been taught the use of metals and so on by the Tocharians. The inventions, which were often cited as being original creations of the Chinese, were not used for anything worthwhile by those people. They were often used merely for superstitious, magical, and religious purposes. Magnetic compasses, to give one instance, certainly first appeared in China, but they were not used for navigation. Instead, they were only thought to be handy for arranging buildings and furniture according to the principles of feng shui. It's a Fang uh, system pseudoscience. It wasn't until Europeans saw magnetic compasses being used in this way that they realized their importance as a means of navigating at sea. Left to themselves, the Chinese would have just carried on using them for feng shui. In the description to this video, I give a brief, well, I'll give detail to 3 books, which anybody interested in looking into this subject might find worth reading. It's absolutely hopeless to rely upon Wikipedia for a topic like this.